Hey, what's going on? And welcome back to another video. If you're new here, welcome. It's your girl, Naiah Nikole. In today's topic, I wanted to talk about my coming out story. I don't really have one coming out story. My whole coming out story happened over and over and over again. I had to come out in many different times and in many different places in my life. So let's start at the beginning. As far as I can remember, things were just so different for me. I didn't feel right in my body, and I also was getting in trouble at a very young age. I'm talking 6, 7, I remember as early as 8 years old, getting in trouble for acting a little too feminine, for doing this, or standing like that, or doing this, or talking like a female, or at that time, a little girl. I would get in trouble by my parents, my uncles and aunts, and my cousins made fun of me for acting different. So at that young age, I could definitely tell you that no, I didn't know that I was trans. I knew that I was off. Things were not right. As I grew up, I remember very clearly when I was 8 years old, I went into a, what do you call those things? A cupboard? Armoire, that's what it is. I'm a Latina, so in my family, Latinas are expected to get married, have children, and blah, blah, blah. The younger, the better, all this stuff. So within my family, all the Latinas that came before me, they all kept their wedding dresses for their daughters or other family members that would want to wear these dresses. And when I say family members, I mean maybe not an 8-year-old boy, because I went into this armoire when I was 8, and I remember opening it up and thinking, oh my God, look at these beautiful dresses. And I tried them on. I remember me and my cousins, I had a lot of female cousins growing up, and I remember they would play with the dresses, and one day I found out where they got them from. So I opened this armoire and I started trying them on behind everyone's back. No one had no clue. I was such a tiny little thing. I remember grabbing the dress and like holding it in each side and walking around thinking I was such a princess. I felt like me. I felt like this is what I wanted out of my life. I wanted to be a bride. And I remember from that age on, I remember all I wanted to do and all I wanted to be was to be a bride. As years went on, from 8 years old, as I was saying, that I could remember, that was the first time that I realized I liked to dress up. I would get in trouble, and I would like to not put my family in a very bad light, but I mean, I got in trouble a lot. I got in trouble for acting feminine, acting girly, acting like a girl, and it happened so much to the point where I started hiding who I was. I was being called faggot, I was being called queer, I was being called gay, I was called fairy, I was called every name on the book that you can think of. I didn't like it, and it obviously made me feel very uncomfortable because I wasn't fitting in with the rest of my cousins or with other kids around the block. So from 8 to 13, I hid who I was. I needed to be like the other boys. So I didn't talk to anybody about that experience of me trying on these dresses and how I wanted to be a bride when I grew up, right? I remember when I was 13, I started junior high school and I met my best friend. Her name was Brittany. Well, her name is Brittany, and we're not friends anymore, unfortunately. I do miss her a lot, so if she ever sees this video, then girl, I miss you so much. I wish we were still best friends. But anyway, when I was 13, I met the first trans person. Now, before this moment, I had never known what trans was. I knew that I like to dress up behind closed doors because I would get in trouble. Obviously, if my parents would have let me do whatever I wanted, I think I definitely would have transitioned at a much younger age. but because this was not normal, I didn't transition. So I met my best friend at 13 years old in middle school. And this was the first time that I met the first male to female transgender person. And remember, we're 13 years old. And I remember she was as feminine as she could be without getting in trouble too much at home. She showed me what transgender was. She's like, no, we're not faggots. Like, I mean, how do you feel? And I remember discovering myself while growing up with her. And I realized that I was transgender. And she started showing me at this time the internet and other transgender people on the internet that, you know, that it was possible to get surgeries and the hormones. And I remember back in that time, we would take, there's like these chewable tablets or chewable gummy things that women take when they're on menopause. And I guess it's supposed to like make your hormones higher, like your estrogen levels higher or something. I'm not sure, but we were chewing the hell out of these freaking candies or medications that they sold over the counter. We were doing it. I remember at that time I was still getting in trouble. So I remember being so jealous of her for being able to be so feminine out in public. And I couldn't do that because, I mean, God mercy, if I like let my hair grow out or told my mom that I was trans, you know, she would have flipped out. My middle school years, by the way, were the best time that I had because I experienced what it was like to let loose and dress up more and put on makeup. And now I had hope that one day I would become this girl. Still haven't came out, right? I remember when I was 16, if my sister is watching this video, I'm so sorry, but my sister actually ratted me out to my mom. At least that's how I remember it, is that she ratted me out and told my mom that I had wigs and dresses and that I was wearing her clothes. I remember my mom came up to me when I was 16 and I knew she had gone through my closet and I had a box. And in this box, I had like 2 or 3 wigs, I had 2 pairs of heels, and I remember I had like a couple of dresses because I would sneak out at that age and dress up and like walk the streets or go out with my friends. And my neighbor, I guess, told my mom, okay, this is how it happened. So my neighbor told my mom that my neighbor would see this girl creeping out of the window in the middle of the night. I think my mom might have asked my sister or something about who's this girl that's coming over. And to a disappointment of my mom, it wasn't a girl I was sneaking in. It was me sneaking out dressed up. So my mom found my stash of stuff and my mom asked me to drive with her on a road trip to go back home. I'm from a very small town in California called Dinuba. And she asked me if I would go with her. I was petrified. I did not want to go with her. And she's like, well, you're going. And I knew that she was going to take this 8-hour, 9-hour trip in the car to ask me. And she did. She took that opportunity to ask me if I was gay, if I liked men or if I liked women. And I remember this so vividly. We were like driving through the Mojave Desert and she turns over to me and she's like, do you like men or women? And I felt my heart sink. I felt the smallest I had ever felt. I, at that moment, wished that the freaking sand underneath the car would just swallow me and the desert would just blow me away because I did not want to answer. But I was in the car, locked in with my mother, and we're driving and I had to answer. So in order to make the situation better, I felt like it would be good if I just told her that I liked both. I remember going into a tangent talking about how sometimes I like men and like women some other times, and she asked me about the clothes and I said that it wasn't mine, it was somebody else, because I mean that conversation would have been so much more uncomfortable. So I didn't come out to her that I was trans at that time. I feel like I would have been just a huge disappointment to her. So I just didn't come out. When I was between 16 and 17 years old, I moved out of my house and I lost contact with my mom and my sisters and everything. And it's the story for another time. I promise I probably will bring it up at some point and probably share it with you guys. But I moved out of my house when I was 16, 17 years old, and my mom didn't hear from me until I was 23 years old. At the time, my mom was in a hospital. So what happened was, because we lost contact with my mom, I had also lost contact with my sisters. And I remember that my sisters and me like gained contact again. And when we gained contact, my sisters wanted to try to find my mom. At that time, I didn't want to find my mom because I knew that she was in really bad steps. But my sister was very adamant to looking for her. And when we found her, she was pretty much dying. I remember going to the hospital, and at this time, I had already transitioned and I didn't have contact with my mom. And another part of me not wanting to have contact with her was because I didn't know how to come out to her. I didn't know what to say. And I remember when we went all together into that hospital, she was there laying there dying. And I remember walking in there and just talking to her. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I remember walking in and talking to her and just catching up on everything and telling her how I had transitioned. And at the time, like, her diabetes had been taking her eyesight, and she couldn't look at me. She couldn't see me. So I had to describe to her what I looked like. And that was like my coming out moment to her, and telling her how all these years I had never came up to her and told her, and how much I suffered, you know, when I was young. It was very hard. It was such a hard moment for me, you know, coming out to her and telling her that now I was a woman. And she accepted me. She loved me. She was asking me how did I look, and I was telling her, you know, oh, I'm the baddest bitch around, of course. And ever since that moment, my mom was my biggest ally. And the reason why I wanted to share this story overall is because I hope that if you are dealing with coming out or dealing with transition, just to know that your parents can come around again one day, because my parents did. That's pretty much my coming out story. I really hope that, I know I'm so sorry if I made you guys cry, but from that moment forward, pretty much my mom supported me. She was my biggest ally. I love her to death. She has now left us, and she's no longer here, and I'll always miss her. To anybody that's having a hard time coming out, just know that things always get better. And no matter what has happened while you were growing up, if you didn't have the opportunity to transition while you were young, never be afraid to start your transition and find the allies that are on your side. And I really want to hear from you guys. Maybe your coming out story. I would love to hear some moments that were impactful in your life. So go down in the comments, let me know what you guys thought about this video. And maybe if you guys would like for me to talk about something in the future. I really hope that you guys are loving yourselves and living every moment, knowing that there's always hope. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. I'm sorry if I made you cry. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. See you guys next time.